Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer, specially designed for you Class 10 CBSE students. We're going to help you absolutely nail A.J. Cronin's Two Gentlemen of Verona for your communicative English exams. You know, this isn't just some simple story about two boys. It is a totally heartbreaking tale of survival and massive sacrifice. Today, we're not just recapping the plot, we are going to decode the exact character traits, the major themes, and the textual evidence you need to grab those top marks. Let's do this.
So, here's our roadmap for today. 1. Intro, author, and setting. 2. Chronological plot and incidents. 3. Characters and their bond. 4. Major themes and title. 5. Exam prep and common traps. And 6. A rapid 60-second revision.
All right, Section 1, Intro, Author, and Setting.
So our author, A.J. Cronin, was actually a practicing doctor before a breakdown in his health pushed him to write full-time. And keep that medical background in your back pocket because it subtly informs the hospital setting we'll see later in the story. Now, the narrative unfolds in Verona, Italy. You probably know it as the ultra-romantic city of Romeo and Juliet, right? Well, Cronin completely flips that romantic expectation on its head right away. The initial conflict doesn't spark in some grand, beautiful palace. No, it happens on the rugged outskirts of the Alps, where our narrator first runs into two shabby, untidy, and pretty desperate-looking boys selling wild strawberries.
Moving right along to Section 2, Chronological Plot and Incidents.
Let's trace the story exactly as it happens, so you can lock the plot into your memory. Notice how the author builds our curiosity step by step. The whole thing kicks off with a super simple transaction, just buying fruit on the outskirts of town. But then, things get a little mysterious. The narrator spots the boys in the public square shining shows and guiding tourists around in the blazing hot sun. Later on, he finds them freezing at midnight in the deserted square, literally fighting off sleep just to sell off their remaining newspapers to the Padua bus passengers. And finally, this relentless, exhausting hustle culminates in a 30-kilometer Sunday drive to Poletic. But, plot twist, instead of a tourist spot, they pull up to a large red-roof villa that turns out to be a hospital.
And wow, this moment brilliantly illustrates the why behind everything these boys have been doing. Peeking through the glass partition, the narrator sees Nicola and Jacopo visiting their sister Lucia. Literally in an instant, the puzzle pieces snap together. He finally realizes that every shoe shine, every errand, every single midnight newspaper sold in the freezing cold was to pay for her tuberculosis treatment. All those seemingly random, desperate odd jobs were actually driven by this profound, heartbreaking purpose.
Up next, Section 3, Characters and Their Bond.
Throughout the text, you'll see Cronin constantly contrasting the boys' youthful appearance with this incredibly heavy, unnatural maturity. On one hand, he describes them as childish enough and artless. I mean, 12-year-old Giacomo is literally described as bouncing around as lively as a squirrel. But when you actually look into their faces, there's a seriousness which was far beyond their years. So why the duality? Well, it's the tragic reality of war. Their father was killed, their home was bombed, and these kids, literal children, were forced into starvation and exposure. The war just totally robbed them of their childhood, forcing them to become the adults in their broken family.
Okay, listen up, because this is a golden rule for your exams. Whenever you claim a character trait, you must, and I mean absolutely must, back it up with specific textual evidence. If you're going to write that Nicola is proud, point straight to the fact that he was vexed when his brother asked a stranger for a ride. Need to prove they're hardworking? List out their endless, grueling jobs all over the city. And to highlight their fierce devotion to their sister, you have to mention that they practically starved themselves, surviving on just black bread and figs, just to save every single penny for Lucia's medical bills. Now you are almost guaranteed to see this question on your exam. Why doesn't the narrator go inside the hospital room? The text tells us exactly why. He turns away from the glass partition because he felt he couldn't, quote, bear to intrude upon this happy family party. He deeply, deeply respected their privacy. He realized these boys wanted to keep their struggle and their poverty a total secret, and he honored that incredible dignity by staying completely silent on the long drive back to Verona.
Let's look at Section 4, Major Themes and Title.
What is so brilliant about this story is how Cronin borrows the title of an early Shakespeare play, Two Gentlemen of Verona, and completely redefines it for us. Historically, right, the word gentleman meant you had wealth, fine clothes, and high social status. But Cronin is arguing that true nobility has absolutely nothing to do with money. It comes from an unbreakable human spirit, selfless sacrifice, and sincere devotion. These two shabby, half-starved orphans who give literally everything they have for their sister, they are the truest gentlemen Verona has ever seen.
All right, grab your pens. Section 5, Exam Prep and Common Traps.
Let's break down some important lines. We do many things, sir.
If this quote pops up as a reference to context extract, remember that it perfectly demonstrates Nicola's serious readiness to survive. He is actively pitching their services to the narrator, showing off his sheer determination to earn every possible penny. It really highlights their adaptability, masking their desperate reality with a totally professional willingness to work.
Then we have, "Just plans, sir." Honestly, this is a tiny quote, but it has massive implications. When the narrator asks what they're going to do with their hard-earned money, Nicola smiles really uncomfortably, looks down at the ground, and mutters this in a super low voice. It proves, without a doubt, that he absolutely does not want a stranger's pity or involvement in their family struggles. It's this incredibly powerful defense mechanism built on immense pride and self-respect.
Now, you need to be highly aware of these common traps. Examiners love using these to test if you've actually read the text and not just skimmed a summary. First up, remember that the cautious driver, Luigi, disapproved of the boys' shabby, untidy clothes, not the quality of their wild strawberries. Second, the narrator incorrectly guessed they were saving up to emigrate to America, but actually, scratch that, they just needed the money to pay the hospital in Paletta. And finally, when asked about their money, Nicola didn't grow pale out of fear, he colored deeply and grew pale out of sheer embarrassment, because he so desperately wanted to protect their secret.
Vocabulary is a major key here. So why was Nicola glaring at his brother in vexation? Well, vexation just means annoyance or agitation. Nicola's fierce pride dictated that they shouldn't ask anyone for favors, ever. But Jacopo, being 12 and a bit more artless, just casually asks the narrator for a 30-kilometer car ride to Paletta. This completely violated Nicola's strict adult sense of self-reliance, which triggered that super vexed, angry reaction.
Finally, Section 6. Rapid 60-second revision.
I want you to take a mental screenshot of this slide right now. This 6-step journey is your absolute perfect chronological map for structuring any long-form essay answer on this chapter. Okay? It starts with judgment from Luigi, moves through the narrator discovering their endless, exhausting work, peaks with the emotional revelation of the hospital and Lucia's illness, and resolves perfectly with the narrator's silent, profound respect for their nobility. Got it?
You now have the exact evidence and the analytical insights you need to absolutely crush this. With their quiet sacrifice giving promise to a greater hope for human society, are you ready to step into your exam and prove exactly why these boys are the definitive, true gentlemen of Verona? Keep these points fresh, always back up your claims with evidence, and go ace that test. But before you go, ask yourself this. In our modern world that is so completely obsessed with wealth and status, how many true gentlemen like Nicola and Jacopo walk past us every single day completely unnoticed?